Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 29 of Generation GC. There she goes with Chris Doughty of the Wasting Time podcast. Last week, we talked about Victims of Love from Good Morning Revival. In a few days, we'll be back with a bonus episode covering something Good Charlotte related that's not a studio album track, and then next week, we'll be back with a song from Youth Authority. Chris lives in East London and has played in a few UK-based pop-punk bands, including Spineless Yes Men. They made a name for themselves in the UK scene, signing to a label at the same time as the Gospel Youth and releasing a split with them. He started the Wasting Time podcast in 2015 as a way of interviewing mostly his friends in the London scene, but as time has gone on, Chris and his co-host Nick have expanded the show, and they've had guests like Kellen Quinn, Frank Turner, and Simple Plan. So, a lot of names y'all will know and love. So, it's a great way for him to stay connected with the alternative music world that he loves. Chris has been listening to Good Charlotte since discovering them on Napster back in 2001, and has been a fan ever since. He's seen them many times over the years, at venues ranging from the tiny Barfly to Alexandra Palace, which is pretty damn cool. Chris and I have a great conversation for you coming up, but first a few notes. Number 1, the United States presidential election is coming up. Please, if you are in the US and you are 18 years or older, please make sure you're registered to vote in some states. There is still time. We only have a couple weeks left until the election, however. And again, as I've been saying, please visit antisemitism.card.co and blacklivesmatters.card.co to learn more about anti-Semitism and the Black Lives Matter movement, respectively. We need to continue speaking out against all forms of injustice. Finally, Generation GC stickers are here. Do you want a sticker? Cool, you've got 2 ways to do it. Number 1, support the show on Anchor. That helps me sustain the show and have the right equipment. Microphones, headphones, whatever extension cords or laptop risers that I need, anything like that, as well as be able to do things like print stickers and get them mailed to y'all. Or, number 2, you can donate to a charitable organization. Don't donate to change.org, please, because that just goes to the website, really. But if you go to blacklivesmatters.card.co, they have a lot of great organizations listed. You can donate to any of them. And then you are going to send me a screenshot of either your support of the show on Anchor or your charitable donation and your mailing address. You can DM me on Twitter or Instagram at GenerationGCPod, P-O-D, or email generationgcpod@gmail.com, and I will mail you stickers. I'll also occasionally tweet or post on the Instagram story about other ways you all can get stickers, whether that's good deeds you can do or ways to help spread the word about the show, so make sure you're following. Well, that's about it for our intro, and now on to episode 29.
So, there she goes is Lucky Number, track 13 on Good Charlotte's 5th album, Cardiology, released in 2010. It was their only release on Capitol Records and their final album released before hiatus. Track 12 was 1979, and track 14 was Right Where I Belong. So you've got a lot of, sentimentality and nostalgia right in a row there. The lyrics of this song, so this wasn't even something I had necessarily looked up even before this in my research, but the lyrics of this song were written by Benji and Joel along with producer Detail. The music was written by Benji and Detail. So, background for all of y'all. Detail is the in-house producer for YMCMB. He's a Grammy-winning producer. He also released a solo album, and his production credits include Sexy Can I by Ray J, I'm So Paid by Akon, Drunken Love by Beyonce, Weed and Boys by Wiz Khalifa, Nicki Minaj, B.O.B., Bow Wow, Tyga, the list goes on. However, not to completely derail, but since we are mentioning Detail, earlier in August, it's August of 2020, while we were recording this, earlier this month, it came out that Detail was charged with rape. The attacks are alleged to have taken place between 2010 and 2018. He was charged with raping 5 women and sexually assaulting another. He denies all of the allegations. That's about all the updates I've seen. But, I don't want to make this into a whole discussion on detail and what he has been charged with, but since we're mentioning him, I didn't want that to get swept under the rug. But yeah, this is a deep cut. It's not a single, and I don't think they've ever played it live. It was, however, played on Season 7, Episode 2 of Man of the Hour, the Adobe radio show by Pat and Sebastian from Simple Plan. So that was pretty fun. So, Chris, I want to help our listeners get to know you. I mean, we connected through Twitter, through the Wasting Time podcast, and I can tell from listening to your show that you are also a very big Good Charlotte fan.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. Yeah.
It's so fun. Listeners, I mean, Chris and his co-host Nick, they have a lot of bands ranging from like legacy acts to newer and up-and-coming bands. And Chris will do, honestly, exactly what I would do if I was doing a podcast like that, which is Good Charlotte just comes up all the time in so many different conversations. It's great. So, Chris, when did you first hear Good Charlotte, and what were your first thoughts on them?
Right. Wow. Okay. This is going back a little while for me.
Yes.
So, I'm just to give you a bit of context. I'm at the grand old age of 37 now. So, I'm an older Good Charlotte fan. So, but the time I first came across them, I think I would have been 18. So this is kind of like early 2001 time. And, at this point, sorry, let me backtrack a little bit just to give you a bit more context on that. So like I kind of got into this sort of alternative pop punk music in like the summer of 99, I want to say.
Okay.
Through like, that was like hearing Blink on the radio, and it kind of went from there. And so from that point, I was kind of like listening to punk and then metal music. And then it was like around early 2001 when I was just like, I ditched the metal music and I'm just diving into this. Because I discovered so many bands in the sort of pop punk, ska, punk genre that I was like, you know what, there's enough here to keep me occupied. And like, I don't want to listen to any of that Chord and Limp Bizkit shit. I grew out of that stuff pretty quickly, I think. So it was around this time that I first became aware of Good Charlotte, because I think I first heard of them because this is pre MySpace, anything like that. So like, we were that generation that was starting to use the internet quite a lot by the sort of the turn of the century. But that involved using like MSN Messenger, Napster, and the other big one was like bands' message boards.
Oh yeah,
which was a huge thing around that time, and it sort of continued to be, I feel like, more or less so for the next decade alongside social media. But obviously, it's died a death now. But at that time, it was huge. And like a band I was really into at that time was the Ataris, and the Ataris message board kind of, there was like a community there, like that me and my brother were on every day, and like, chatting with people on there. And so I think it was on there that I first heard Good Charlotte mentioned. And what intrigued me about them was that someone was talking negatively about them, and I mean that probably won't shock you, but
no, does not shock me at all.
But so these were the TRL days, so this genre of music was featured heavily.
Oh yeah, it was everywhere.
Often. And someone said, like, they mentioned like the new generation of bands, and they were like boy bands like Good Charlotte. and I was just like, oh, okay, like, why is a boy band getting mentioned in the Atari's message board? So I legit thought, oh, they are talking about like a manufactured band,
Right.
And I was just like, I was just intrigued. I wanted to check it out to laugh at it, basically. So I went on the Good Charlotte website, and like there was the pic, because it was just after the self-titled album, so it was the kind of photo shoots from that period.
Oh wow.
So it kind of almost fell in line with like a boy band, And I was just like, but I was like, oh, it's like a band, but a boy band, which at the time, you didn't really have. I mean, later on, the Brits did it with like Busted and McFly and stuff.
Sure.
Sort of, that manufactured those sort of boy bands that had guitars. So I went on Napster, as you did at the time, and just downloaded it. So they weren't actual tracks from the album. They were kind of like recordings of songs that did eventually make their way onto the self-titled. And I just remember thinking, fuck, if this is a boy band, I hold up my hands. This is I really like this.
Right.
And I think it was, what's the song? Don't Want to Stop? Don't Want to Stop?
I Don't Want to Stop. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was the first one. I was just like, this is catchy as fuck. And then I started reading about them, and then obviously it was clear that they weren't a boy band and they were just a regular band, and that was just someone hating on them by referring to them in that sense. But sorry, that was a long-winded way of how I first came across them.
No, I love that. And I've also been on an Atari's Kick recently. So that
really?
was, yes,
Okay.
that was really fun to hear. Yeah. San Dimas High School Football Rules came up on Shuffle like a week or two ago. And then that just sent me on a spiral of playing the whole Blue Skies album on repeat.
Yeah. That's their best era, I would say personally.
Yeah. So, Chris, you are my first guest from the UK, but I know that Good Charlotte has a ton of fans in the UK.
They do.
What has Good Charlotte's fan base been like in the UK over time? And I guess really specifically, I'm curious to hear like what people in the UK thought of Cardiology. We talked about this with Shannon Carlton, who was in Australia at the time, but where this Cardiology was super popular in Australia, but in the US, it was not a very popular album.
No, same here. Can I just give you a little bit of because I feel like their fan base has changed a lot since they've been a thing in the UK. So I'll try and give you a real quick summary of it. So like the first year I was into them, they were, I think obviously they were making waves in the States, but they weren't really anything over here. And then it was like just before the Young and the Hopeless, they were coming to London to play. They were going to support Our Lady Peace and then do their own show.
Oh, wow.
At like a couple of days later at the Barfly, which I don't know if that venue still exists, but it was a small venue basically.
Yeah, 200 cap. I looked it up.
Okay.
Yeah,
200. That sounds exactly right. Because at this point I was really into that self-titled album and loved what they were about, and the internet was a different time then, so you couldn't keep up with bands that were sort of distant in the same way that you can now. So me and my friends went to that show, and these guys I was friends with were opening for them as well. So it was kind of like, it's like the perfect night, and like went to the show, and like Benji and Joel just wandering around. So, we're chatting with them and stuff. I remember Benji saying to me, because I said, did you play with Our Lady Peace the other day? He was like, yeah. And I was like, how's it feel to be doing the headlining show? And he was like, honestly, I didn't think anyone would come. And it was really cool. It was just like this tiny community. I mean, like 200 people who were like nerds like me who had heard them somehow on the internet, but were just like uber fans, and like, it was just, it was the best show. I've still got the set list framed on my wall.
That's great. That's so cool.
Like I literally ripped it off the stage. It was that kind of venue. But yeah, sorry, go on.
I mean, you've also seen them at like Alexandra Palace. Pally, as they say, which is like, I looked it up. I was like, if we're going to talk about these two venues, I have to look it up. Pally is over 10,000 people capacity.
Yeah.
What was it like getting to see them in like such a big room like that?
Oh, it was amazing. Because like that's the biggest venue they've played in the UK, to my knowledge. I think I'm quite safe in saying that. But that was last year. So it's like the fact that they are still relevant enough that they can draw a crowd to headline there is amazing. And that's the thing. Like so after that show at the Barfly, Young and the Hopeless got covered over here, like Lifestyles and stuff was all over Kerrang TV and stuff. And they delved into that audience that was listening to Blink and Newfound Glory, which was like frustratingly for me. Like I remember, like, so I went to see them a year after that, like a bigger venue, and there was me and my friends I was with, Nick, who I co-host the podcast with, actually was one of them. And like most of the audience were, I would say, from the age of 10 to 14. And I was already 21 by this point. And so it was quite, I mean, obviously they had fans my age, but it was unusual. I was against the norm, they kind of, it was like these kids who were just seeing it on TV. And then, so that was like their fan base initially. And then it just kind of, it changed over the years because you had people who just, because, kids that age, some of them stick with it and then they move on to other things, so lose a lot of that audience. But then when you go and see them now, you'll see kids who are like, like 5-6 years younger than me, but they were the ones who were there that first time who've kind of held on to them all this time,
Yeah, I was going to say that's, I'm a little younger than you. I'm about to turn, I will be 29 by the time this podcast comes out.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I feel like the past several GC shows I've been to, I feel like I've kind of been pretty much in the average age wise, but there's
that makes sense.
There's definitely like plenty of people who are, mid to late 30s, as well as people who are much younger than me.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was something I loved about the Ali Pali show last year, like just the diversity of the audience. I saw people in their 40s there, and it's funny, so my fiance often laughs at me for how much I love them and stuff. I mean, not that she thinks there's anything wrong with GC, but just like, how much I particularly love them. But at that show, there was a guy in front of us who must have been early 40s, and he was crying when they were playing one of their songs. And she was like, oh, okay, that guy's more intense than you, I guess.
Hey, nothing wrong with crying at a GC.
Oh, no, I just had nothing but admiration for him.
Yeah. So, Chris, you mentioned your friend Nick, who co-hosts the podcast to you. You guys have a great dynamic together. I love hearing You're welcome. I love hearing your intros where you're just bouncing off each other. How did it come about that you and Nick decided to do this podcast together?
Well, it's a bit of a funny one, actually. So I started the podcast almost 5 years ago with some other friends who, like, we were all London based, all played in bands in like the London scene. And it was kind of like it was mainly London bands. It was always in person. Like, they'd come to my flat. Mm-hmm. There was a couple of curveballs, like Mike Herrera, when he was in town once, came, and, that was, one of the better ones for us. And then we had the guy from Spanish Love Songs came to my flat and stuff. So, but for the most part, we were doing them like every 2 or 3 months, and it was just that kind of vibe. And then at the start of last year, I was randomly messaging with, do you know that band Alistair?
Yes.
So I was messaging with Tim from Alistair. I just said, hey, I did this podcast. If we got you on the phone or Skype or whatever, would you want to come on? And he came back and he's like, yeah, it sounds like fun. And I was all excited by that. And I said to my co-hosts at the time, and they were just all like, no, I don't want to do it.
Lame.
Exactly, right? And so at the time, I was just like, oh, what do I do? Maybe I could just go solo with this podcast. And like, because, Nick and I have been friends forever. Like, we used to play in a band together 20 years ago or whatever. And he lives in the Northeast in Newcastle, and I'm based in London. And I was just catching up with him like I always do. And I was I was moaning about my then co-host. And then the idea came to me. I was just like, actually, Nick, like, your music taste is pretty much the same as mine. Would you be up for stepping in if they don't want to do it anymore? And that was basically how it happened. So Nick joined me on the podcast around March last year. And we've been doing it as regularly as we can since then. And it's gone and it's been pretty cool, and like we've got people on that, that I previously never thought we would be able to get. So it's been really fun. And like, I'm still cool with the other guys. And, there was a period where we didn't talk to each other, but we're good now. So it's all kind of worked out,
Yeah. I mean, just because it doesn't work out to do a podcast with someone doesn't necessarily mean that, you're not going to remain great friends.
Right. Exactly. And I'm more comfortable doing it with Nick in that, like, whilst we don't have, maybe the exact same taste in music, we're pretty close. You can't get much. I can't think of any other friends I have that I'm as in line with. Whereas like the other guys, I'll give you an obvious example. They fucking hated Good Charlotte,
Oh, so, well, yeah.
They didn't appreciate me bringing them up, which obviously I often did even in those days.
Yeah. Something I noted, Chris, from listening to your show was that you and Nick, like, I can tell you're really knowledgeable and like everything there is to know about, all the guests you have on the show, whether that's, the band Rome, who are kind of a younger band, or someone like the most recent episode that I heard was Matt Pryor of the Get Up Kids.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Been around forever. You know a whole lot about these people, but you also leave a lot of space in the conversation that allows them to open up. So can you talk about how you typically get ready for a podcast?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's funny that you say, "Oh, we have lots of knowledge on our guests." I would say like 80 to 90% of the time that's probably true, because we're seeking out guests that we're fans of.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. We want younger bands on that we know are making waves, but we might not know that much about going into it, and
right.
So when that's the case, it's just like, I'm sure you do as well. When you have a guest, you're just, finding out what you can online to try and, because as you'll hear from our shows, like we basically want the artists broadly to tell their story of their career. So we'll just identify things we definitely want to talk about, and then we'll and like hand it over to them to kind of, lead the conversation, which seems to work pretty well. Although I should say, doesn't always work. We do have the odd guest where, you'll ask them a question, they'll answer it really short and simple, and then silence,
Yeah.
So, and you have to work a little harder with those ones.
If you're doing an interview that's going to turn into an article, sometimes you can still pull an article from that. But on a podcast, It's like very obvious when the person you're talking to just like doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you want it to be a conversation that flows. I mean, it is fun. I don't know if you found this too, but like with the magic of editing, you can make it sound like it's flowing better than it actually did.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, I don't. The way that I see editing is not to change what happened, but to give the best reflection I can in the audio that I publish of the conversation that I had. And like, there's an episode, like the episode that I have that's going up next week that I just finished editing, is like I had a cough while I was recording. So there were like several places throughout where I like got up to get a cough drop. Stopped talking and I was coughing for 30 seconds. So like I edited that out, right?
Yeah, of course. But yeah, it's funny, like just when there's an awkward silence that's just slightly too long, I'll be like, I'm cutting that. It's painful to listen to.
Totally. So, Chris, before we dive into There She Goes, I have to ask, so I guess it's a two-part question.
Sure.
So, number one, what is your favorite episode you've done so far? And number two, bucket list guests you'd want to have on the Wasting Time podcast, besides, of course, the members of Good Charlotte, because I feel like that's a bucket list. It's
kind of an obvious one. Sure. So can I pick two for my favorite episodes?
Totally.
Just because I love them both for different reasons. So last year we did Max Collins from, do you know Eve 6?
Yes.
It's funny because they were a big part of Good Charlotte's early history, because they worked with John Gilmore and did the early shows with them. So we had Max, who's the singer, and I've listened to Eve 6 forever, but I'm not like on the Good Charlotte level with them. So I had to fill in a lot of the gaps in their history before we spoke to him. But he just came on and he was just so charming and so entertaining, like made us laugh so much. And it was like, it was a Friday night and we were having some beers doing it, and it was just such a good time. And Nick always cites that one as his favorite as well. And Max was so cool as well, because I don't know if this is something you find, that you'll have someone on the show and stuff, and obviously you're going to promote it, but you ideally would like them to promote it as well. And then some people do and some people don't, and that's just something I've learned. And like, if they don't, that's cool. I'm still appreciative that they've given me some of their time for free, basically, and that's right. I'm not going to ask for more. That's amazing. So there's a real divide in who promotes and who doesn't. But like Max promoted the shit out of the podcast, and even because I mentioned before, Nick and I used to play in a band, so Nick's got a decent voice and stuff. So Nick just did a little Instagram video where he was doing 30 seconds of the Eve 6 song Promise, and obviously tagged Max and Eve 6 out of it. And Max was just wrote loads of nice comments underneath it, and he retweeted it on the Eve 6 page and stuff. And I was just like, I like this guy.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And the other one would be one that we did very recently. Do you know the band Quiet Drive?
Yes.
So Quiet Drive, I would say, are in like my top 5 bands.
Okay.
I've just always loved the guy's voice, and I feel like they've always kind of just been a bit underrated. Like I feel like they should have been as big as someone like All Time Low or something, because I think.
But they never got like that level.
No, like nowhere near. I mean, they did well. They were on a major and got quite big in Japan and stuff like that, but never made it that huge. But I'd been pestering Kevin, the singer, to come on the show for ages, and like he never used to reply. And again, like it's the same as when people don't promote it. I'm like, that's cool, you know, like he's got no obligation to give me like an hour of his time for nothing, you know, like who am I? You know, like I wasn't bitter about that at all. But then I tried once like the pandemic hit and stuff. I just thought, I'm just going to try and drop him a little email, and he came straight back to me. He was like, "Yeah, sounds cool." So we spoke to him a few weeks ago, and he was just like the nicest, most interesting guy. And because I'm such a huge fan of his band, like I could have just spoken for hours. And I had so many questions, and yeah, I just enjoyed it so much. So those would be the 2 that I would pick.
I love that. And then give me a bucket list guest that you'd want to have on your show.
Okay, so aside from those Madden twins,
right,
obviously.
Right. I think that's like a given. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So I'd say like, you know, Blink is such a huge band for me growing up. So Mark, Travis, or Matt would be amazing. Still would love to get John Feldman. Like he's an interesting guy. And
wait. I just have to. Okay, so Mark, Travis, or Matt from Blink. So you wouldn't want Tom DeLonge.
It's funny because you know, I wondered if you'd asked me this question, and then I knew I was going to say that, and I was like, I wonder if she'll pull me up on Mark, Matt, and Travis. Personally, because I know you're a big Angels and Airwaves fan, aren't you? I've heard
very
you
big Angels fan.
So I don't want to insult someone.
No. Hey, Angels is a band that definitely does not appeal to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind Angels. I've got no problems with that band. I think they've got some decent songs, but I just, when I see him in an interview these days, I'm just, I don't know. He just, I don't want to say he talks nonsense, but some of it, I just think, what's going on with you, man? Like, and like I feel like he just talks at the interviewers, and whereas, you know, yeah, it is what I mean. No, I'm not saying I wouldn't want to have him on our show.
Sure, yeah.
But I wouldn't. He's not bucket list in the same way the other 3.
Fair enough. So, Chris, I am so excited to talk about There She Goes because, I mean, like I said earlier in my sort of intro, it is a deep cut. I feel like this song is kind of overlooked, but it's one of my favorite songs from Good Charlotte. I mean, from this album, but just overall too. I mean, we were chatting a little about Cardiology just over Twitter. Why did you want to talk about There She Goes in particular? I think for a similar reason, it's one of my overall favorite songs by them. One that is massively overlooked. I'll give you an example. Like, so when I was first dating my current partner, and you know, like we'd be cooking food together or whatever, so we were making a playlist of music we both like, and she knew nothing about this genre of music, like, you know, next to nothing. And so I was picking songs that I think, you know, someone who was coming to this music for the first time, what would be the best songs to drag them in. And when I was picking some Good Charlotte songs, I think this was like one of 2 that I put on the playlist. Okay.
And sure enough, you know, in those early weeks, it was one of the ones that stood out. And she was like, yeah, I really love that song. And that got me thinking. I'm like, yeah, it's such a good pop song. Like,
yeah.
How is it not a single? And
right?
how has it never been played live? I mean, you could say that about a few songs of theirs, particularly on that record.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So when I think you asked me to pick a song from Cardiology, and at that point, I think you'd already done 1979, which would have been another contender for me. So it just seemed like an obvious choice for me.
Hell yeah. I love that. Yeah. And it's great for me when I get to talk to people who are like so enthusiastic about some of these deeper cuts. So, Chris, I want to talk about what this song means. And by the way, I have had my own thoughts on what this song means. I want to hear yours first. And when I was doing some research in preparation for this episode, I learned some things that people think this song is about, but I hadn't even considered. So
right. Yeah.
I want to hear first what you think that this is about.
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously it's got the home connection because they're talking about Maryland. I mean, obviously that jumps out, and it's kind of it's sandwiched in between two other songs that kind of have a similar vibe. Obviously 1979 is talking about their, it's the year they're born, and they're talking about their parents in it, etc., etc. And it's, like the lyrics of the song, I thought, until you mentioned this thing on the notes, which I'll let you bring up. So, which I think is really interesting. I want to get into, but so prior to that, I thought, oh, this is a song about, a relationship with a girl in their hometown. And like, if you think Cardiology came like 3 years after Good Morning Revival, and in that time, they kind of, I know Joel's still with Nicole Richie, but like Benji had been out with Paris Hilton, and they were proper little Hollywood A-listers, right. They did the Greatest Remix album in 2008, and like if you followed their YouTube or social media at the time, they were just all about the Hollywood lifestyle.
Yep.
And then I remember like they did an interview with a podcast with All Press in 2010, so in the summer before this record came out, when they're talking to Mike Shea, and they're saying about we've just dived back into the scene we came from, and we feel like we've kind of almost forgotten it these past few years, and they were just saying there's something in the water, and like we're loving this band now, we're loving that band now, and we feel like we stopped paying attention for a while, and we're back, and that's what this next record's going to reflect. So I kind of feel like that song reflects it a little bit, because it's almost
a nostalgia for the scene they came from, as much as like their hometown of Maryland.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
I love that.
Because they're just like, talking about feeling ashamed a little bit from what, how they let themselves get to, and then you've got the theme going on in the next song. Obviously they talk about I'm sorry it took me so long, blah blah blah, I feel like this song fits in with that same theme, and it's kind of
totally
similar things.
I mean, great track listing. 1979, There She Goes, Right Where I Belong. Yeah, for
sure.
Yeah, I think, the story that I've always told myself in my head about this song is that it was like someone from their hometown, not necessarily like a girlfriend, but like an old flame, like someone they were kind of crushing on, who always liked them, who sees, maybe comes to see them in Los Angeles, sees what they're up to, and is like, I don't like this version of you. You've lost everything that like actually made you who you am. Yeah. So, I spend a lot of time thinking about this song, right? It makes me nostalgic and homesick for Maryland. I've been to Maryland a few times. I've been to Baltimore, and I've been to College Park, and
sorry, where are you from originally? Sorry,
I live in New Jersey.
Okay, and are you born and raised in New Jersey?
Yeah, I was out of state. I was in Ohio for college, for university, for 4 years, and then I've been back in New Jersey since. Moved a couple of years ago to be closer to my job. But yeah, so I'm New York City area, if we're talking geographically, but pretty far out in the suburbs.
Okay, but sorry, I cut you off. You were talking about
no. Which is just a couple hours from me. It's not all that far.
Right.
Have you ever been out this way to Maryland, to the US?
I have not. I've been to the US many times, but I'm sorry to say it's always been the West Coast. The West Coast every time. So I've kind of neglected the East Coast and the Midwest, et cetera, et cetera. So,
sure. Yeah. I've never been to Waldorf, and I don't expect there to be much like sightseeing there. Right. But I would kind of like to, at some point, if I ever find myself, when it's like kind of safer to travel again, if I ever find myself down that way, maybe I'll detour into Waldorf. But I think it's so special when a song can like make you homesick for a place that is not your home.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is like how this song kind of makes me feel. And it also gives me that like warm and fuzzy for like a person in my hometown that I grew up with and grew apart from because I changed and a fame got to my head, even though I don't have a person like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. Do you relate to that at all? Because
no, I see what you mean. I see what you mean, and like the sound of the song musically would help with that as well, I think.
Yes, totally. This musically, I feel like this is just very not classical because it's not like classical, but like classic and timeless. The sound of the song.
Yeah. Well, I like that. It almost sounds like it could be the fray or something when it kicks when it starts.
Yeah.
By the time you're at the chorus, you've got the heavy guitars coming in, and it's definitely a pop punk, pop rock song or whatever. But yeah, I love how it guides you in.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it could be like the fray, maybe. I don't know if like Snow Patrol, but like those keyboards or
yeah, absolutely
is great.
Yeah.
So here's where we get into the stuff that was a little new for me in the research.
Yeah.
And I've just been thinking and wondering, and I think it's always fun to wonder, like, is this song about a specific person, or is it kind of like about a feeling and they write a story around that?
Yeah.
Wait a second. Is this song about Benji and Joel's mother? Not something I ever picked up on until I was doing my research on this. Never, ever crossed my mind.
No, mine neither.
Yeah. I mean, I think we were both saying we kind of thought it was about like an old girlfriend or someone they were close with that was like almost a girlfriend kind of, right?
But it's crazy, isn't it? If you read through the lyrics with that idea in your head, it takes on a whole new meaning, doesn't it?
Right. Someone who she lifted me up for the first time.
That's the real line that does it, isn't it?
Yeah. She lifted me up for the first time. She is disappointed with what I've become, disappointed with what I've become. I mean, to me, now I read that. So first, okay, I'll read first what Benji told Alternative Press about the song.
Okay.
He said, so there was a track by track about this album. He said, it's no secret that we're proud to be from Maryland. This song is the realization that things change, but we're still the same boys no matter how far we go from home. Our hearts are always there. It's a love story for Maryland. So that, I mean, and they like really did not talk about this in like any interview that I really saw. So that's about all we have officially. But I'll read some of the fan comments that imply that this is about their mom. So there was a fan review on Hit Parade. User Stephanie's 1991 gave the album a 5 out of 6 and said, "There She Goes is a song for their mother, with the message that Joel and Benji Madden hope their career in traveling haven't changed their relationship with their mom. Also a nice song." On YouTube, user Mironam, I don't know if I'm saying that right, said, "I've always thought this song was about their mom." And then this is, I think, the kind of best written comment on songmeanings.com. User Emma Ver said, "I think I grasped it after a few years of listening to this song. I thought it was about a girl that he loved from Maryland, but I think that this is actually about his mother that liked him better before when he was not famous, and about the fact that he misses that time in his homeland, close to dear people."
Yeah. I mean, it adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah, totally.
And then you read the line like, "Oh, there she goes. She's so beautiful. She's flying back home to Maryland." So it's like, oh, their mum's come to visit them in LA, and
right.
And now she's going back.
She's like, what have you become?
Yeah. And it's making me feel nostalgic for Maryland now that she's gone. Yeah, it adds up, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think about too, like how they had to get out of Los Angeles to write and record this album, in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And
was the Vancouver recording the one that they scrapped before and then started again?
Los Angeles would have been what they scrapped because
okay.
You listen to Right Where I Belong and he says, "As I leave the empty station, first thing I see the sun over the mountain, West Hastings Street."
Okay.
That's a main road in Vancouver.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, who knows? Maybe like their mom came to visit sometime kind of when they were initially working on the first version of the album, or it was sometime before that. And yeah, I see it a lot. I don't know. It's not enough for me to definitively say it's definitely about their mom.
Sure.
Because I still feel like it could be about like a romantic or whatever kind of relationship.
Yeah, and it could just be about their hometown and their old friends, and they're putting in the romantic kind of sounding lines just to kind of tie up
to
the
make
song
it
a
a
little
story.
bit.
Yeah,
story. That's very possible, to be fair.
Yeah. But I also know that like Benji and Joel are very close to their mom, and they seem to have a lot of admiration for her and a lot of, respect and closeness for their mom. So like knowing that, rereading the lyrics, listening to the song, I'm like, okay, I could really see how this fits.
Yeah.
But it could just be like kind of a general thing about their love of Maryland.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be fascinating to get it out of them, but like, it's fun. It's fun to interpret and kind of speculate, isn't it?
That's kind of why I did the podcast in the first place. Was I was like, there's about 1,000 Good Charlotte questions I would like to ask, and I know that I'm never going to get the band to sit down for like hundreds of hours to answer all of them. So maybe I will just attempt to answer them and ponder them myself on this show. I don't know. I think about like this song, and I think this is a great song because it leaves so much open to interpretation. Like there's enough story that it could be about a very specific person, but there's enough general feeling that it could just be they weren't writing about a specific person. They were writing about a feeling and kind of came up with a story.
Yeah, of course.
You know the band Pentimento?
I'm not sure I do, actually.
Oh my God. One of my favorite bands. I think they toured the UK once or twice, but they're a small band, and they basically broke up a couple of years ago, and they've had a couple reunion shows here and there. One of my favorite bands, but they've always done something that I love, which is they very often will write so much about an emotion and use maybe some metaphors or allegories, but they don't really use, in a lot of songs, they don't necessarily use like narrative elements, right? So it's like exactly what they're feeling, but you don't necessarily know what they're writing about.
Okay. Yeah, that's clever.
Which obviously is in great contrast to a band that would tell a story that's so specific that you're like, oh, this is like exactly what they're writing about. But it's, I don't know. I feel like there's a couple songs on this album that I'm like, it could be about something very specific. It could be,
but without giving it away.
Right, without giving it away. But it could be just about kind of a general feeling, and they're like putting a story to it. Chris, did you have any like memories or stories you want to share about There She Goes?
Not specifically that around that song. I mean, just that recent one of like, my revisiting it myself, like by playing it to my partner and her getting into it. Like, that's been like a more recent pleasant memory around it. But outside of that, it's just more like when that album came out and listening to that album as a whole, and it was just one of the standout tracks. I mean, I can't, and particularly given that they would never play it live. It's it's hard to have any specific memories around that song in that way. What about yourself?
I mean, the big one for me is that this song, just like all of the emotions this song brought up, have like inspired me to like start writing fiction again.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Nothing that is publishing worthy at this point. But yeah, I mean, And I
Is
feel
that
like
something you want to work towards?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually a great thing. And that's a great question. I would love to, there's like a sort of novel I'm working on right now. I say a sort of novel because it's like the whole structure of it has been changed quite a bit over the years. But
right,
I would love to. I mean, on a very realistic level, it's time, right? Like I have a full-time job and this podcast, but you know,
sure.
I try to work on my fiction writing when I can, and it's a very nice outlet. Would I ever get to the point where like I quit my full-time job and do that? I mean, that's like quite a ways away in terms of like money and such. But yeah, I mean, I would love to spend more time working on my fiction writing. And
cool.
Yeah, for a lot of years when I was doing music journalism, I kind of got away from fiction because I was just like my writing energy was taken up. Right. I would publish 2 1,500-word features a week plus several news posts every week. And so I was like, all right, this is enough writing.
Right.
And now I'm not like writing on the same frequency. So I'm itching to do some.
Got you.
So we'll see.
And it's cool if this song, like, you know, pushes you to do it a little bit as well, you know?
Yes, totally.
Yeah, I was just going to say, did you want to talk a little bit about some of like the critics' reviews around this?
Yes.
I mean, obviously not specifically the song, but the record. You know, I know you've touched upon some of them. Before, but it's always fun to get into.
Well, I think you actually sent me this first review I'm going to mention. I tweeted that I would love to have someone who wrote a very negative review of Good Charlotte. I would love to have them on the show and like kind of ask their feelings on that review. And I would love to make that happen at some point. I think that would be incredibly entertaining and very full circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, you sent me this review from NME. Yeah. They were not a fan.
Yeah, I know. And it's unbelievable as well. Like, so I remember reading that at the time and like it stuck in my head. And then when you mentioned that, I looked it up again and it was worse than I remembered. And this is the NME. This is like one of the leading musical publications in the world historically as well.
Yeah.
And it was just like it was written by a child who had a vendetta against them personally. You know?
Right. That's the thing. It's like you can make valid criticisms.
Of course.
But this feels like it was written by someone with a vendetta against them.
Yeah. And like it's really weird when someone does that. Like, I mean, real quick side note, like one of the bands I played in once, we were playing this show with Gospel Youth, I think, at the time.
Okay.
And like Punktastic, which is like a publication in the UK.
Yeah.
They used to be really big. They're not so big now, but they sent someone to review the show and when it was published, it was just like it was really weird. Like none of us met this reviewer that night. And She was like, she had a personal vendetta against us. I mean, to the extent that the lead editor of Punktastic at the time wrote to me personally to apologize.
Oh gosh.
That's the only other example I can think of ever reading something on a proper publication that was like this. But that's unbelievable on the NME.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. So it's a short review. So I'm just going to read the whole thing.
Do it. Yeah.
Headline: monstrously offensive record which doesn't really deserve your time /money/ears. And then the body of this review. Whoa. A quick glance at the track listing for Cardiology suggests Good Charlotte might have started covering The Smashing Pumpkins, 1979, and The Laws, There She Goes, which is, if not downright creepy. Side note, how is that creepy?
Yeah,
like, people do cover songs?
Yeah, there's nothing creepy about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Then just a little beguiling. But no, both songs are stone cold Madden originals. Boo! If you like your rock and roll played by 4 fat, talentless fucks.
Did it say fucks? Wow.
Yeah, which first of all, I'm going to very briefly sidetrack that I have absolutely zero tolerance for fat shaming. Yeah. I'm an overweight person. First of all, it's not, and the issue I have with it is that so often people will call someone fat when they are just looking to throw out negative adjectives.
Totally.
Their size is relevant.
Yeah.
I mean, Donald Trump is a great example where people will be like, oh, he's so fat, whatever. And I'm like, okay, Donald Trump is horrible, but his size is not relevant. He's not bad because of his size. His size does not make him bad. His size has nothing to do with his quality as a person. And similarly here, I mean, you want to call them talentless fucks, call them that, but their weight or size, but frankly, I would disagree that they were overweight.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Right.
Not only is it completely inappropriate and out of order putting that, but it's also just completely not true as well, which is really strange, you know?
Right. I mean, that is, you know, you want to call them talentless, but don't bring in unrelated. That's to me like what takes something from like a relevant review to like you're very clearly just trying to bash when you bring in unrelated criticism. Yeah. So if you like your rock and roll played by 4 fat talentless fucks and Morrissey's old drummer Dean Butterworth, seriously, WTF, then just sawed off, disgustingly derivative and pro-tooled to the max, Cardiology is monstrously offensive. The latest shit streak by music's laziest sons. But seriously, what did you expect? Amazing indie covers? So wait. First, they're saying it's creepy that it sounds like they're covering popular songs, and then they're saying amazing covers. I don't get it.
And it looks like this is written by a guy called Matt Wilkinson. I could be wrong, but looking at when I looked at it again, when I sent it to you, and then I looked him up, and it looks like he's a successful Apple Music DJ, you know, who's had a very good career in music journalism. And it made me, I didn't do this, and I won't do it, but I was so tempted to tweet that review, tagging him in it, and just saying, this is an actual review that this man wrote.
Right.
That includes fat shaming.
Right. Like that, I mean, there was a big thing in like the mid to late 2000s, I think, of music writers just being really negative and trying to be as creatively negative as they could.
Right.
So, you know, monstrously offensive, the latest shit streak by music's laziest sons. Frankly, that's pretty reflective of like a lot of music writing in that time. And I think that changed, and the general vibe around music writing changed kind of a little after this, as like blogs started coming up and there was a lot more positivity in general music writing. But I think the fat shaming is, that's completely unexcusable. And I think in our society, I feel like people are comfortable calling out racism and sexism, but some things like fat shaming or using fat as an insult, people just still accept.
Do you think it's like something that society will look back on in 5 to 10 years time and it will be quite shocking?
I mean, I hope, you know, I don't think we're there yet, because I still see people mocking, you know, Donald Trump is a big one, or anytime a female celebrity gains weight, people are like very quick to point it out, right?
Sure.
So I hope society like is able to eventually look back and say, wow, that was not okay, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I see also a lot of and not to go down a total anti-Semitism rabbit hole, but like I also see a lot of anti-Semitism that gets kind of swept under the rug because
I heard you talk about this on your last show. It's very true. It's very true. I'd recommend listening to this, but do you know who David Baddiel is? Is he known in the States at all? He's quite a big name over here in the UK. He's like a comedian, writer.
Okay.
But he was on James O'Brien's podcast specifically to talk about this. He's Jewish himself, and it was just fascinating. And he was making some very, very good points on that.
No, I'm.
Well, it's worth a listen.
I will. Yeah, I will. Please do send me a link. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. It's y'all. I think you know from listening to the show how I feel about all forms of discrimination and hate. And I just want to make sure that everyone listening knows that fat phobia and fat shaming are included in that list. Someone's weight or their size does not determine their worth and is not reflective of their character as a person. Do not ever, even casually, use weight as an insult. It is incredibly offensive.
And it's crazy, isn't it? Like, I mean, it's ironic that he calls the album monstrously offensive when his review is monstrously offensive. You know?
Right. I mean,
not just to the band, but to the general like out-facing world.
Well, right, and to say like fat and talentless as if those two are related.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Exactly. I mean, say if, as you said, you know, put talentless fucks if you want, but you know, don't need to throw fat in front of that. And also, come on, this is a review for the fucking NME. Be a bit more appropriate than just calling someone a talentless fuck anyway, you know?
Right. This is NME. This is not like
this is not someone's personal blog.
Right. Right. So, God, I'm glad that I saw that review because I think it was good to have that discussion. Let's read a few more, though.
Let's do it.
The Urban Wire gave the album a 3 out of 5. They said that Cardiology doesn't quite match up to the highs of their first few albums. On first listen, it will be easy to dismiss Good Charlotte's latest efforts, but even the most jaded fans will find something to sing along to, with catchy tracks bursting with heartfelt lyrics and punchy choruses like There She Goes and Like It's Her Birthday.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
I actually feel like that is closest to the median of the response for this album, right? Because you had a lot of people that were just super not into it, and then you had a few reviews that were super positive, but I feel like a lot of people kind of landed something in the middle where it was like they like it and there was something they can sing along to, but they didn't grasp onto it as immediately as like they went hopeless.
Right.
I mean, I can't disagree with what they say.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, we all have our personal feelings about this record, but like, you know, you and I, we're huge fans, you know, so it's our opinions are going to differ to like the general population on this one, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to read another fan response from songmeanings.com.
Oh, yeah, do it. Yeah.
This user said, the meaning of this song seems to be pretty clear. It's about a guy that has left home and made something of himself when there's a girl back in Maryland, Good Charlotte State, that liked him back before the guy was famous. She thinks that he's changed and doesn't like the new girl. It's like the girl might have always liked the guy, but he never saw that, and now he's become famous. She doesn't like him anymore.
I mean, it fits, and particularly if we're going to go down the line that this is a story, you know, you could, I can see how you would interpret it that way.
I mean, the girl could be their mom,
right? Like, yeah.
I don't know. There's so many things, and that's what I think makes a great song is when you're like, there's so many different things it can apply to, but it also feels so specific to each of them. Yeah, of course. Which I think is very cool. Let's read some YouTube comments. So this was a fan upload. It was not like the band's account. The user was Asking Horizon. So we can guess this user's 2 favorite bands.
Yeah. I think that's easy.
Yeah. People got heated in the comments. Absolutely heated. I guess one user made some negative comments and people were like responding and tagging them. User Summer said, I can't lie, I think I liked Good Charlotte better back then too. Everyone told me this CD would be more like their older ones, but it's really not. It's not like all that other crap on the radio nowadays. I know everyone is going to hate me for this, but I'm kind of disappointed in the GC guys. I used to live off their music, but this isn't the amazing band I remember. Still, I guess the song is okay.
I love the ending of that.
Yeah. Still, I guess it's okay.
Yeah.
User Martian Muffins says, IMO, which is internet speak for, in my opinion, this is by far the best song they've done since the stuff on Young and the Hopeless. Don't really dig the rest of this album, though. Okay, fair. I mean,
that's okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a great song. It's also one of my favorites from this album, so I could see why this might be your favorite, even if you didn't like a lot of the stuff in between.
Yeah.
User Edie Spunk called out a user that was hating on them and says, I'm not hating your opinion, but I just want to say that Good Charlotte is doing the exact opposite of what most bands are doing these days, which is selling out. Good Charlotte is taking turns in their career to pursue what they think is the best music they can play. Just because that turn is something you don't like doesn't mean you should hate the band. Go ahead and not like their new stuff, be nostalgic, but respect them for doing what they want, not what everyone else does. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've got no qualms with that.
I think, and just on it's not like a very meta level, but being someone who has stuck with the band over so many years, I feel like I'm kind of like this person, right? That I'm like, hey, they're trying new things.
Sure.
Don't hate for that.
Yeah.
But it is fair for someone to be like, okay, they're trying new things and I don't like it.
Of course. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
They're trying to do something that might be successful and that cheapens it. And I don't like this new thing that they're doing. That's fair.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's valid. Obviously, I'm someone who, and you are someone who's stuck with Good Charlotte for close to 2 decades, but not everyone has. And like,
no,
I can name a handful of bands that I'm like, okay, I like a couple of records, but I just really haven't stuck with them over time.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I mean, I can name several bands that I hold a couple albums real close to my heart, but I didn't get into their entire catalog, and I didn't feel like I could really stick with them over time. And that's fine.
Exactly. I mean, like someone like, for me, I don't know, All American Rejects. I like their first 2 records. I still like the odd song. I'm pleased they're still big. I'm pleased they go, but like I haven't listened to every record they've put out, for example.
Sure, same.
They'd be an example.
But like, they've got a couple early records that I love and that I always sing along to when they come on. They're a lot of fun. I mean, I think that's that's a very good example. Well, Chris, this has been very, very fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so glad. And I looked up the last I checked, my listeners were like 72% in the US.
Okay.
And I don't remember exactly what percent UK, but I think UK was like second in terms of percent.
Okay, it's funny that's the
UK
same as
and
us.
Canada. Yeah, UK and Canada were number 2.
Then was it Australia?
Like 2 or 3. Yeah, probably Australia. But I'm hoping to eventually get, like I said, someone from Japan, and I definitely want to keep getting people all over the world.
Of course. Yeah.
Although someone was tweeting about this, which got me on the vibe yesterday, but I do miss, I started this podcast like when lockdown went into place. I was like, all right, might as well start it now. So I've never done any of these podcasts in person, but I do also miss in-person interviews. Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, this format totally works. And obviously, as I say, it's what we do for the most part with our show. But yeah, I mean, you get something a little bit extra when you're in the room together, I think. I mean, it's more fun to do, I think. Yeah.
In future recordings, I'm thinking about including video, not in the podcast itself, but just so I can kind of see my guests and connect on that level.
I mean, that's what Nick and I do. So we'll, the guest won't see us because we use another platform, but we'll do like a silent Zoom so we can see each other, which kind of really helps when we're both asking questions.
That's smart. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, Zoom has been great. Zoom has made it so much easier because I had in the past tried to do like podcasts and stuff over Skype, and Skype doesn't have a way to record.
Yeah, that's not helpful.
Yeah, no. So, Chris, how has There She Goes held up for you over time?
Well, I think you'll be able to tell by the fact that I put it on that recent playlist and I've been enjoying it recently. It's held up really well. I feel like if they put out a new album now, that song didn't exist and was on that album, you just think, this sounds relevant. This is cool.
Yeah, totally.
And to be honest, if we do ever get another record from them, I'm hoping it will go more in that direction. And I'm holding, and I have hope with that, because I don't know if you heard this, but we had the guy who produced their last record, Zach, on our show a while ago, and we were talking about, because you know how the last record ends with California. So, which is obviously a very different vibe to the rest of that record. And he did say, he was like, yes, we did this on the end as kind of like maybe a bridge to what the next record will be. And when he said that, I was like, yes, I'm liking the sound.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But, you know, whether that comes to be or not remains to be seen. But
sure,
yeah. But I feel like a record with songs like this, I'd be all about that.
Totally. Same. And I feel like Good Charlotte never does the same thing 2 albums in a row. So something kind of like this, or more like California, would definitely be like a contrast from a lot of what Generation RX was.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's what you would expect from them next. Yeah. Yeah.
So, Chris, what has Good Charlotte meant to you over the years, and how has that changed?
They've almost become like an identity for me, in the you know, I mean lots of friends who are from the sort of punk scene in London and stuff, who may not love Good Charlotte, but if a Good Charlotte song comes on, they'll text me because it'll make them think of me, you know. And like if we're talking about music, the first thing they'll want to bring up is Good Charlotte, because they associate Good Charlotte with me. And like even like with people outside the scene, like with my family and stuff, you know, it's just
I relate to that so much.
Yeah, I thought you might. Yeah, I mean, do you find yourself like defending them to people quite a lot over the years and stuff?
Over the years, yes. However, like since I've started this podcast, I don't defend anymore, because like I don't feel the need to defend anymore.
Yeah.
Because if I felt the need to defend, I wouldn't have been at the point where I was like, I'm going to start this podcast.
Right. I guess that's the way it's changed for me. Like I've just become a bit more chilled about it, and like, you know, just laugh about it. You know, if people don't like them, they don't like them. That's fine. You know, like they're not for everybody, and you know, I kind of. You know, it's not that I don't take the band seriously. I do. And I think, you know, they're amazing songwriters and they've meant a lot to me over the years. But, you know, I kind of have fun with the fact that this identity I have around them, you know, like.
Exactly.
So like, I'm well, COVID permitting, I'm getting married in December. And there's a couple of little nods to Good Charlotte that are going to happen at the wedding that I think people will get a kick out of. Like, I mean, like even the people that don't like them, because I'm so associated with them that they'll laugh about. You know, I don't want to give away the surprise in case any of my friends listen to this, but I'll, you know, if COVID allows us to have the wedding in December, I'll send you some pictures so you can laugh at.
Please,
because I think you will 100% get a kick out of it.
Oh, I'm sure. Chris, this has been a lot of fun. Do you have any last words about There She Goes, about Good Charlotte, or about yourself?
Just There She Goes. If obviously if you're listening to this, you are a huge Good Charlotte fan, so you know, maybe go back and listen to particularly the second half of Cardiology. It's held up, I think,
just for the second half of Cardiology.
Yeah, right. Because I mean, I'm not hating on the first half. It's got some fun, particularly like, you know, the more like the pop songs and stuff. But I just think that the songwriting in the second half is just amazing. It's held up so well. So go and listen to that. Spend some time with it. And and obviously if you listen to this show, please check out the Wasting Time podcast.
Yes.
You know, maybe not every episode will be a guest that your listeners will be into, but I'm sure there'll be ones that kind of tied into the world of Good Charlotte here and there. I mean,
you had Josh Madden on the show.
Obviously we had him on, and you know, we've had other guests who kind of have known them throughout the years, and some who
other bands that people, if you listen to this show, other bands that you definitely like.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I have been doing the Generation GC and Friends playlist on Spotify, where we include the song that we cover on the episode, as well as recommendations from our guests.
Okay.
So can you leave our guests with a recommendation? Just anything you've been listening to lately that you want to share?
Yeah, I think just to, as another thank you to Kevin from Quiet Drive, I'm going to pick a Quiet Drive song if that's cool.
Perfect. What song?
I'm going to go with the song Jessica, which was from an EP they did. It was a single, but I don't know if are you familiar with their music at all?
No, like not, I mean, I know who they are, but I honestly like don't really know their music.
Okay. Well, so when you add this song to the playlist, give it a listen because the chorus is it's a fantastic pop rock song. That could be a hit with the right kind of coverage, I think anyway, but
amazing.
Yeah. So Quiet Drive Jessica would be my recommendation.
Amazing. Well, Chris, where can people keep up with you and the Wasting Time podcast on the internet?
So if you just Google the Wasting Time podcast, will be the first thing that comes up. You'll get our website, and then I forget our handle's different on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. But if you literally go on any of those platforms and search Wasting Time podcast, will be the first thing that comes up. So we should be quite easy to find.
Amazing. Chris, thank you for coming on the show. Listeners, thank you for tuning in to hear me and Chris talk about There She Goes from Cardiology. Last week, we talked about Victims of Love from Good Morning Revival. In a few days, we'll be back with a bonus episode covering something Good Charlotte related that's not a studio album track. And then next week, we'll be back with a song from Youth Authority. My name's Molly Hudelson. I've been your host, and you can follow Generation GC at Generation GC Pod, POD, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also follow me, Molly, at M Hudelson, MHUDELSON, on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes or your favorite podcast provider or app, as well as rate it and leave a review and share it with your friends. Thanks for tuning in.